Sometimes you whisper into the silence, hoping someone out there hears you. You cry into your pillow, scream into your steering wheel, talk to walls that never speak back. But what if someone is listening, really listening, not judging, not interrupting, just silently, patiently, attentively waiting? What if every word you've ever said, every tear you've ever cried, every hidden plea was heard? God says, I'm listening to every word. And he means it. It was 3:33 a.m. when Sarah jolted awake, her chest heaving like she had just run for her life. Her apartment was silent, her phone dim, the moon casting a faint silver glow through the thin curtains. But she felt it. Something, not the usual kind of fear, but a presence, a stillness too heavy to be ignored. She'd been crying herself to sleep for nights now, praying, no, begging, for something to change. Her career was slipping. Her fiancé had ghosted her 3 months before the wedding. And the worst part? No one seemed to care. Her friends shrugged her off with casual pity. Her family gave her timelines to move on. Even her therapist looked tired. But that night was different. That night, she didn't just cry. She spoke. God, are you even real? She whispered into the void. I've lost everything. I feel like I'm nothing. Do you care? Do you even hear me? Her voice cracked. Everyone keeps telling me to be strong. But God, I'm done pretending. I don't want to be strong anymore. I want to be held. I want to be heard. The silence didn't answer. But in her bones, she felt warmth, like invisible arms wrapping around her soul. It didn't fix everything, but for the first time in months, she slept without dreaming of falling. The next morning, she found a post that stuck to her bathroom mirror. She hadn't written it. No one had keys but her. It simply read, I'm listening. She thought it was a prank. Maybe she had written it in a sleep-deprived haze. Maybe she forgot. But as the days passed, the signs multiplied. A stranger in a grocery store looked her dead in the eye and said, God heard you last night, then walked away. At first, she panicked. She thought she was going crazy. But deep down, a different kind of fear gripped her. What if it's true? A week later, Sarah went to her favorite spot, the cliffside by the lake where she used to go as a child with her father before he passed. She needed answers. She needed silence to scream into. I don't want signs, she said aloud. I want truth. Speak to me. Show me you're real. A breeze blew through the trees, making the leaves tremble like they too were holding their breath. And then her phone buzzed. One notification. A voice message from an unknown number. With shaking fingers, she pressed play. A man's voice, calm and deep, filled the air. Daughter, I have heard every word. Every time you thought no one noticed, I noticed. Every time you felt worthless, I wept for you. You are not alone. I have been beside you in every room, every night, every tear. And now, I will begin what you cannot finish on your own. Be still. The message cut off. No number to trace. No way to reply. Sarah stood frozen. Her knees gave way and she dropped to the ground, not out of fear, but because the truth wrapped around her like a blanket in winter. She had been heard. The next day, she received a job offer she hadn't even applied for. Same field, better pay, flexible hours. Her emails had no record of it being sent. When she called the number listed, the receptionist said, Oh, we've been expecting you. The position was made for someone like you. Later that week, she walked into a bookstore and a small journal fell from a high shelf, landing at her feet. The title, He Listens. She flipped it open and found a handwritten note on the first page. You'll find me in every page you write. So she wrote, every night, every doubt, every fear, every whisper of hope. But not all silence means peace. One evening, as she returned from work, her lights flickered. The air felt off. She felt watched. And then came the dreams. A cloaked figure standing by her bed whispering, Stop speaking. He's not real. You're imagining this. You're losing your mind. She woke up in cold sweats, nights on end. Her journal pages would turn to ink blurs. Her phone recordings of her own voice would sound warped and distorted. It was a battle now. Not of flesh, but spirit. Because when God listens, so does the enemy. One night, exhausted and afraid, Sarah spoke aloud again. If you're real, protect me, because I feel like I'm drowning. And then the warmth returned. Stronger. She felt fire light up in her soul. Her fear didn't vanish, but it bent to something bigger. In her sleep, she dreamed of a lion pacing at the foot of her bed, keeping watch. The shadow never returned. From that day on, Sarah began to speak differently, not with bitterness, but with boldness. When someone complained about life, she listened, not with pity, but with purpose, because she knew behind every rant, behind every silent sob, was a heart screaming, "Do you hear me?" And she would say softly, "Someone does." One day, a woman approached her at a coffee shop, disheveled, eyes swollen. "I know this is weird," the woman said, "but something told me to talk to you. I just feel like I need someone to hear me." Sarah didn't hesitate. She took the woman's hand and said, "You're not alone. I promise." That day, something clicked. She realized God was not just listening to her words. He was now speaking through her. Every kind word she gave, every shoulder she lent, every time she chose to hear someone's heart, God moved. So if you're watching this, thinking your voice is lost in the noise, thinking no one hears you, remember this. Every word you've ever spoken in the quiet, every late-night plea, every whispered why, has echoed into the heavens. And the reply is gentle but thunderous. I'm listening to every word. Don't stop speaking. Don't stop believing. It was 3:33 a.m. when Sarah jolted upright in bed. The room was still, but not peaceful. Something hung in the air, heavy, watching. Her breath came in short bursts as she clutched her chest, not out of panic, but from the weight of something she couldn't explain. The walls around her were painted in silence, but beneath that silence was something else, awareness, presence. She had been falling apart for weeks now. On the surface, things looked manageable. She still went to work, answered texts, posted half smiles on social media, but inside, her world was crumbling. The man she thought she would marry had disappeared without a goodbye. Her job, once a source of pride, now felt like a prison, and her faith, once a steady comfort, had thinned into a fragile thread. But tonight was different. She sat up, her legs curled beneath her, and whispered into the dark, "God, are you even real?" The silence didn't mock her. It held her. "I've lost everything," she choked out. "Everyone says I'm strong, but I don't want to be strong anymore. I just want to be heard. I just want you to listen." Tears traced down her cheeks as the silence stayed. That's when she felt it, not heard, not saw, but felt a warmth that bloomed in her chest like a soft light, a calm, a kind of sacred hush that told her, "You are not alone." The next morning, a yellow post note was stuck to her bathroom mirror. In her own handwriting, or so it seemed, but with no memory of writing it, "I'm listening." She froze. Her apartment was locked. No one had keys but her. For a moment, she laughed at herself. Maybe she wrote it in a half-dream. Maybe she was desperate for signs. Maybe she was just losing it. But as the week unfolded, strange things began to happen. She walked past a man on the street who paused mid-step, looked her directly in the eyes, and said, "He heard what you said," then walked away like nothing happened. In the grocery store, a child bumped into her cart and stared up at her with wide, innocent eyes and said, "Don't worry, he's already answering." No one else seemed to notice. Not the man's eerie comment, not the child's message. But Sarah noticed, and it terrified her. One night she returned to her safe place, the cliff near her childhood home, overlooking the lake. The air was cool, still. Stars blinked overhead, and the wind whispered through the trees like it carried secrets. She sat on a rock, pulled her knees up, and said aloud, "If you're really listening, show me. No more guessing. Speak." Her phone buzzed. One new voice message. No caller ID. No record of a call. With trembling fingers, she pressed play. "Daughter," a voice said, gentle, powerful, endless, "I have heard every word. I was there when your heart broke, when you screamed into your pillow, When you begged me to take the pain away. I was there when you thought I was silent. I wasn't. I was just listening. Her breath caught in her throat. You think I've been distant, the voice continued, but I've been beside you every step. I never left. You needed to speak so I could begin. Then the message ended. Sarah stared at the screen. No number, no trace. But something inside her had shifted. She felt seen, heard, known. 2 days later, an email popped up from a company she hadn't applied to, offering her a job, better salary, better hours, closer to home. When she called a contact number, the receptionist answered like she'd been waiting. Yes, we've been expecting you. Your resume was perfect. I didn't send one, Sarah replied, her voice faint. The woman chuckled softly. Doesn't matter. You're the right one. Later that week, she walked into a bookstore. A journal fell off a high shelf and landed at her feet. She picked it up, deep blue cover, gold letters. He listens. She flipped to the first page. A handwritten note. Write to me. I've always written back, just not in ink. From that night on, she wrote, poured her soul into those pages. Rage, sorrow, hope, silence. And every time she closed a book, she felt like something unseen had heard it all. But the peace wasn't permanent. One evening, her lights flickered. Her dreams turned dark. In them, she saw a shadowed figure standing at the foot of her bed, hissing, he isn't real. You're making this up. Stop speaking. She began waking up in cold sweats. Her journal pages would crumple overnight. Her phone recordings became distorted. Her voice twisted and garbled. The silence had turned hostile. Something didn't want her to keep speaking. One night, she stood in the middle of her apartment, tears in her eyes, and cried out, If you're really there, protect me. I feel like I'm breaking. The response wasn't loud, but it was fierce. A warmth surged through her chest. Her breath steadied. She saw, behind her closed eyelids, a lion made of light, pacing before her like a guardian. The dream stopped. The flickering ceased. Peace, dense and real, returned, and with it, courage. She started speaking with boldness again, not just to God, but to others. One morning at a cafe, she noticed a woman in the corner, sobbing quietly. Sarah approached gently. I don't know what you're going through, she said, but I do know this. He hears you. The woman looked up, startled. I just told God I felt invisible. I told him to send someone, and here you are. It kept happening, over and over. Strangers drawn to her, confessions given freely, and all she did was listen. One teenage boy on the verge of suicide said, I just needed one person to say my life mattered. She didn't quote verses. She didn't lecture. She just sat, held his hand, and said, It does, and I hear you. That was all it took. Her strength didn't come from being fearless. It came from being heard. And now, she became an echo of that same message for others. God wasn't just listening to her words. He had been shaping her into someone who could listen for him. People asked her, How did you get through your darkness? She'd smile and say, I finally realized I was never talking to the walls. And when they looked at her with silent questions in their eyes, she'd lean in and whisper, He's listening to every word, even this one. Sarah thought the storm had passed, that after the darkness, the light would stay. But peace, she soon realized, isn't a permanent place. It's a rhythm, one that must be protected. Weeks after her life began to feel aligned, after the signs and voices had calmed her fears, she started to feel empty again. But this time, it wasn't silence from above. It was silence from within. She stopped journaling. Her words fell hollow. She tried to speak, but her voice trembled in the quiet. The once vivid feeling of divine connection was now faded, like a dream slipping away after waking. She began to question everything again. Had it all just been a fragile mind creating comfort? Had desperation made her hallucinate hope? The nights grew long again. Not frightening, just numb. A kind of spiritual amnesia. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't despair. It was worse. It was detachment. One morning, she stared at her reflection, whispered, Are you still listening? But didn't feel anything back. No voice, no warmth, no sign. That was the true test. It's easy to believe when signs follow every prayer, when strangers confirm your words, and miracles ripple through your days. But what about when the air is still and heaven feels closed? That's when she understood faith isn't built in signs. It's built in the silence. So instead of retreating into bitterness, she stood still. She lit a candle each night, spoke aloud, even if the words echoed unanswered, and she listened, not to the sky, but to her own spirit. Days later, she received a call. A young woman, Amira, had been referred to her through a community group. "I don't know you," Amira said, "but someone told me you're the one who listens." Sarah hesitated. She didn't feel strong anymore, but something pulled her forward. They met at a park bench under a vast, gray sky. Amira was shaking. "I lost my baby," she whispered. 3 months ago. I still wake up and hear her crying, but when I reach over, there's nothing there." Sarah didn't offer platitudes, didn't try to fix her. Instead, she whispered, say everything you're holding in." And Amira did. She poured it all out, anger, sorrow, guilt, confusion. She shouted at the sky, cried until she couldn't breathe. And when the storm of words died down, Sarah said, "He heard you." Amira's face twisted in pain. "I don't feel anything." "I know," Sarah replied. "I didn't either. But just because you don't feel him doesn't mean he's not near." They sat in silence, a sacred one. Sometimes the greatest gift isn't in hearing God speak. It's in knowing he heard you. That day, something inside Sarah reignited. She realized her emptiness wasn't abandonment. It was transition. God was training her, shaping her, not just to receive messages, but to become one. Over the following months, she began speaking at community events, support groups, even churches. But her message was always the same. Not sermons, not perfect theology, just a promise. He's listening to every word. And people listened. A man stood up one evening and said, "I lost my wife, and I stopped praying because I thought he stopped answering." Sarah walked to him and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Maybe he was just grieving with you. Sometimes silence is his way of sitting beside us." Another woman said, "I cursed God for years. I told him I hated him." Sarah looked her in the eyes, and he still stayed. That's when the real shift happened, not in her surroundings, but in her understanding. She had once cried out for proof, for a sign, for a reply, but now she knew God had been responding all along, in breath that calmed her panic, in strangers who spoke sacred truth, in dreams that warned and protected, in unexpected peace when logic said she should be broken, and above all, in her own transformation, from broken to vessel, from silence to storyteller. Then came the hardest test of all. Her mother fell ill, a sudden stroke. The doctors weren't hopeful. Sarah sat beside her hospital bed, holding her mother's cold hand. The monitors beeped. The air was sterile. The hope was thinning. She leaned close and whispered, "Please, I know you're listening. Please save her." No voice came. No warmth filled the room. Just beeping. Just machines. Just slow breaths. And yet, something inside her refused to panic. She stayed for hours, humming, praying, singing softly into the sterile silence. The doctors prepared her. Prepare yourself. She may not wake up. But Sarah didn't prepare for goodbye. She prepared for surrender. "God," she whispered that night in the hospital chapel, "if you take her, I'll still believe. But please, if you're listening, give me one more moment. Just one." Morning light spilled into the room. The machines hummed. And then a whisper. "Sarah?" Her mother's voice, weak, dry, but real. Sarah ran to her bedside, tears bursting from her eyes. "Mom." Her mother blinked slowly. "I heard you praying." Sarah clutched her hand. "You were unconscious." "I know, but I heard every word, like they were coming through water, soft, but they wrapped around me." Sarah broke, not in fear, but in awe. Even on the edge of life, the words reached, not just to God, but to the soul. That moment sealed everything. A year later, Sarah wrote a book, not one of theology or instruction, but a simple memoir titled, He Listened. It became a whisper in many broken ears. It wasn't about grand miracles. It wasn't about loud faith. It was about quiet courage. In the end, her message was simple. Don't stop speaking. Don't stop crying out. Even when you feel unseen. Even when you're surrounded by noise or drowned in silence. Speak, because he's listening to every word. And sometimes that's all the miracle you need.